simple permanent tissue called parenchyma. Okay. So under microscope, you will observe parenchyma cells something like this. There are few important observations we had to find over here in this picture. See, each cell is not having any definite shape. Some are oval, some are cylindrical, some are hexagonal. Yeah, they're having various shapes. So the tissue parenchyma contains cells which are having different shapes like oval, round, cylindrical, etc. Then each cell is having nucleus which is clearly visible, but other than nucleus, you are having large vacuole inside each cell. Observe the picture clearly. You are having big vacuole in each and every cell. The vacuole is big when compared to the small nucleus. That's the second important feature. Then you have gaps between the cells. Suppose if you take this whole as the tissue of parenchyma, different cells are there. In between cells, you are having gaps. See the pointer? Okay. Between the cells, you are having gaps. Those are called intercellular spaces. Means what? Inter, in between, cellular cells, spaces, gaps. You find gaps between cells. Those are called intercellular spaces. This is the other important feature of parenchyma. So here, you can say by observing the parenchyma tissue, this tissue contains cells of different shapes, small nucleus, but big vacuole, and there are spaces or gaps in between the cells in parenchyma tissue. These are the characteristic features of parenchyma tissue. You will find parenchyma in almost all parts of the plant. You will find it in roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and all parts. Branches, all parts of plant will have parenchyma tissue. Usually the parenchyma tissue, we call it as ground tissue or fundamental tissue because it will be present all over the plant body. Okay. Now, let me explain why these characters are so for parenchyma tissue. Okay. If you people could hardly remember about the presence of vacuole while discussing the meristematic tissue, I explained the point of absence of vacuole in meristematic tissue. The vacuole will be big in parenchyma tissue here. Okay. But these vacuoles are absent in meristematic tissue. While discussing the characters, I explained why vacuole is absent in meristematic tissue.
Ma'am, because vacuole causes hindrance in the cell division of meristematic tissue since the meristematic tissues are constantly dividing.
Yeah, that's a very good try, very good answer. But here in this context, one more point I included along with that. Absence of vacuole in meristematic tissue. What meristematic tissue generally will do? They will do only cell division. They will increase the length and width of the plant. That's all. There is no storage of food in meristematic tissue, isn't it? So there won't be vacuole in meristematic tissue. That point I mentioned over there. Remember?
Ma'am, it has a denser cytoplasm.
Yeah. We are talking about only vacuole. So here, why the parenchyma tissue is having big vacuole is parenchyma tissue main function is storage of food. So once after photosynthesis, carbohydrates and sugars, glucose are prepared by the plant, they have to be stored somewhere, isn't it, in the cell? So the parenchyma cells or the parenchyma tissue is the one where the food materials which were prepared by the plant are stored. That's why the cells will have big vacuoles. So here this big vacuole infers to storage of food. by parenchyma tissue. Am I clear with this point? You just compare the meristematic tissue and parenchyma tissue. Parenchyma tissue function is basically storage. That's why they possess big vacuoles. Okay? When compared to small nucleus, every cell will have big vacuoles in parenchyma tissue. When you compare the same vacuole part with the meristematic tissue, in meristematic tissue you won't find any vacuole. Totally vacuoles are almost absent in meristematic tissue because the meristematic tissue are involved only in cell division, isn't it? Here when you take the parenchyma tissue, these are the important features of the parenchyma tissue, and you find parenchyma tissue almost in every part of the plant. Yes. If you take the parenchyma tissue, you'll find the parenchyma everywhere in the cell, I said. We are having different names for parenchyma tissue, like chlorenchyma, then parenchyma. These are various names given to parenchyma tissue. Chlorenchyma means what? If the parenchyma tissue will store chlorophyll in its cells, then that parenchyma tissue is called chlorenchyma. Okay? So by the name chlorenchyma is the tissue which helps in photosynthesis. Then parenchyma. Paren here refers to A spaces. Means you will find this parenchyma tissue in hydrophytes, then in xerophytes. What are these hydrophytes and xerophytes? Anyone having any idea regarding hydrophytes and xerophytes? Anyone having any idea about hydrophyte and xerophyte? No? Okay. So hydro stands for water plants. Phyte is nothing but plant. Okay, hydrophytes are the aquatic plants like the lotus, water lily, etc. And xerophytes. Zero here stands saline conditions, most salt conditions. The plants which will grow in marshy soils, or you can say in deserts, the cactus plant, all those are called xerophytes. Okay, so here the parenchyma tissue, which is called as parenchyma, you will find in hydrophytes and xerophytes. In hydrophytes, they give balance to the plants to float on the water, and in xerophytes, they will store water for further uses, as xerophytes are the one which will grow in deserts. Okay, these are the application of parenchyma tissue. We have parenchyma tissue as chlorenchyma, then you will have the parenchyma tissue as parenchyma. Chlorenchyma is basically for the photosynthesis purpose, and parenchyma is for floating of the aquatic plants and storage of water in xerophytes. Okay, this is all about the parenchyma tissue.